Without further ado, Julie Shaffer, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Courtney and Amy. I'm so excited to be here today. Those of you that know me at all know that I am passionate about graphics and proposals, and specifically how they work in InDesign and can make your life easier. To give a little history about me, if you don't know my story, I entered the industry before many of you got out of diapers, probably. But I've been in the industry since 2001 at an engineering firm, and I worked my way up until 2012. I decided that I really wanted to go on my own. So I started Shaffer Creative in June of 2012 with the intent actually to be a photographer and just do some other things. And almost immediately, I started getting calls to do proposals and thought, this is pretty cool on this end of the world, so as a consultant. And because of that, I'm passionate of InDesign and using it efficiently and effectively. So I style everything. I make it as easy as possible for everyone who uses it. So that is part of what we're going to talk about today. So feel free, if you have any questions throughout, like Courtney said, use the chat window. I'm going to try to look for that, but I'm excited to get started. So let's dive in. Let me make sure I'm on the right screen. So we all know that the human brain was built to process content visually. So we know that our minds really as a protective instinct, when you walk into a space or look at anything, your brain is almost immediately processing everything that you can see. In fact, it processes so quickly, according to a recent MIT study, we can process a single image in 13 milliseconds. That is how advanced our brains are. I have no idea how they could possibly test that. But just knowing that, how well our brains process information visually really lends itself well to how we use that and hack that for proposals. So for example, I have an image on the screen right now, which you can see is a camel, and you probably can immediately start to kind of feel where this is and get a sense of the time of day, and you probably can almost sense a temperature that it's hot out and it's, you know, high noon. But other than that, we really have no context for this image. So although our brains have processed it so well, that means nothing to any of you without any kind of text to back it up. So when we look at visuals, that's one piece of the puzzle, but we also have to have descriptive text to go with it. And with that come infographics. So we're all familiar with infographics. We see them all the time, but they tend to perform better than any other type of content. That's according to Venngage. So knowing that if we use something visually compelling with something descriptive to go with it, that is a really, really powerful way to communicate. Why are we really not doing it very well in proposals? So let's look a step further at some additional research. So retaining information, as a reader looks at text only, 3 days later, they're likely to retain about 10% of that information. So to put that in perspective, you probably have some highly text-heavy proposals, and knowing that your readers are looking at that and knowing that they are meeting together as a selection committee probably several days, if not weeks, after they have reviewed your proposals, best case, they're only going to remember about 10% of that text content. But when you put that text with a relevant graphic, they're 65% likely to remember it 3 days later. So what does that mean? That means we really, really have to try a lot harder about pulling graphics into our proposals. So when we're talking about proposals, we know that we have main objectives that we have to meet. So graphics are almost secondary to that, it feels like, because we first have to respond to the RFQ and RFP, right? We have to reinforce our firm's brand. And we need to provide the reviewer with differentiating content that is digestible, relevant, and memorable. So what did we just talk about that's going to be digestible and memorable? graphics. So let's look at some infographic types. There's many, many types of infographics. I have boiled these down into ones that are relevant to us in proposals. And the first one is really what I just call graphically styled text. This is not, as you can see, an image at all. It's really just text that I added some color to and made some stuff bigger. But by doing that, I effectively turned this into a graphic. And I did that because in many cases in our proposals, having just a call out differentiator, that might be all the time that we have. We might be up to the wire, have to go to print in 30 minutes. So if this is all that we can do is this kind of graphically styled text, then go for it. I try to have at least one graphic element on every page. The next area that we know about, of course, are charts and graphs. So any kind of pie chart, bar chart, and we'll talk about some ways that we could create those. Here's an example of just a bar chart and I can show you how I did this when I actually did this in InDesign using InDesign's powerful math feature. So I can show you that if you're interested.
I'm sorry, did you just say InDesign's math feature, like M-A-T-H?
I did. You can actually put math into InDesign in a super clunky and elementary way, but yes. So I will show that later.
Awesome.
The next area is really basically 95% or maybe 90% of the graphics, and that's a visual element or elements plus descriptive text. So I have a couple of examples on the screen. You know, the icons are very popular with something relevant. In this case, I have a stopwatch, and then our team can be on site within 15 minutes, for example. Or also a quote. You know, I have the quote, I have a little head, I have, you know, the project manager, City of Fort Worth. That is actually a real quote from one of the decision makers over there. So anything that's really kind of an element plus this text to go with it. Here's another example. This is from one of my handouts, I think from SRC, using those icons again, having a header, and just using some color and some things to graphically make text a little bit more interesting. Are there any questions so far? Awesome. If you asked one, I didn't hear it, so feel free to use chat. And then the next most popular area is obviously images. We use photography throughout our proposals. I would argue that your images should always have a caption, and the caption should always be relevant to what you're talking about. So in my example here, my caption is similar to the scope of this project, as in the project that we're pursuing. This fire station has 4 bays and was designed in 6 months. So make sure those photos really resonate your message. So, and you just don't have photos in there for photos' sake. Because when the images are relevant, readers spend more time looking at them than they do reading the text on the page, but they purely ignore decorative images. This is actually from a study, a recent study from in our group. So the bottom line is do not use irrelevant graphics to fill space. An example from another online site, the Yale School of Management. This is an eye tracking study, again, performed by NN Group. And you'll notice that all the blue dots represent where the eyes are spending time and how much time. And notice that on the right, where they perceive that as just a stock image, they completely have ignored it. So know that they are not paying attention to stock images, and you shouldn't be using them, certainly not for specific projects. You can use them to complement something or maybe as a background element, but just be mindful that we are a savvy group and that we will only really spend time looking at images that are relevant to us.
Hey, Julie.
Yes.
Has there been any studies about stock images in social media? Like, is it the same
Dismissal
of those images in social media?
As far as I know, yes, this particular study did allude to just general web content. So I believe in social media as well, but I have not done that specific level of research.
Okay. And when you're thinking like proposals, was this a like website or was this a physical piece of paper proposal?
So in this case on the screen now, this is actually a website. So,
okay,
but graphically still the same kinds of
yeah,
things.
Absolutely. I mean, like thinking about just your website pages.
Right.
Yes, it applies to proposals too, but thinking about your website, yeah. Cool.
Right. Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about developing graphics. I'm actually going to escape out of that mode and into just regular InDesign. So the first area I want to talk about are callouts or attention getters, those that we talked about that's just styled text or maybe an icon or maybe just kind of a little group of elements. So one of the biggest questions I get is where do you get those graphics? And you know, I'm a marketing department of one and I'm not a graphic artist, and I hear that sort of thing all the time. So really, you can draw them fairly easily. This is a simple map icon. I actually drew this in InDesign, and all you have to know how to do is I'm going to the rectangular tool, I'm holding my mouse down and grabbing the ellipse tool. I'm just going to draw a circle. And this is something that a lot of people don't even know exists in InDesign. Let me just fill that with pink. When you go to the regular selection tool, we can move our shape around. But when you go to the direct select tool, that's the white tool right under it, the second tool down. When I click off and click back on, my handles become white. Let me see if I can zoom in for you a little bit. And that means I can activate just that piece. And using my arrow keys, holding down shift to skip 10 points at a time, I can actually easily just start drawing shapes myself. So pretty easy, and of course I could stretch that out and clean that up. But simple shapes are actually very easy in InDesign. You can also use, underneath the rectangular tool, the polygon tool. So when you first drag it, it might be a hexagon, but if you click the space bar once, let me go up arrow and I'm adding sides to it, down arrow takes sides away, but then the left arrow, hit space again, and I just lot, there it is. Excuse me, the right arrow will bring it in and create a star shape. So that's the polygon tool. And once I've done that and let go, the next time I use the tool, it's going to be a star shape. And if I hold shift down, it's going to stick at the proper ratio. Let me just make those black. So those are some just simple things that a lot of people overlook in InDesign to create some basic shapes. A next area that people completely overlook is the glyphs panel. If you go up to type in glyphs, let me open this. Hopefully you can still see my screen. So these are all of the characters available to you in any of the fonts. So I'm going to just choose Wingdings. And a lot of these are super hokey and you wouldn't use them. But occasionally you'll find something that is useful, like this water drop, perhaps. So I could draw a text frame and I could just insert that little water drop. I'm currently in some sort of bullet setting, so let me get over here to body. Oops. So super helpful. And again, let me blow it up really big. If I really like that shape, I can actually disconnect it from the font by going to type, create outlines. So now I've just created an anchored shape. And that's just because I did it too quickly. So now I have a shape. So I can shift and hold, I can make it grow, I can change its color or stroke. So super easy to find all kinds of things just in the fonts that are already installed on your computer or Adobe fonts. Like this little graphic of these little guys actually came out of a font. Same with the male and female icons. Those are actually in a font as well. So that's just a couple simple places to get graphics for icons. But then my ultimate favorite, and this is a paid service, and that's called Noun Project. If you're not using the Noun Project, immediately after this call, go to thenounproject.com. For $40 a year, I think, you get access to millions and millions of icons that you can use in Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. They are fantastic. These are what I use probably the most often. So if it is not in here in this icon set, it probably doesn't exist. But if your company doesn't want to pay for it, that's fine too. For free, you can get the Noun Project. You can get like 100 icons. What's even cooler is you'll notice this looks like a panel in InDesign, and that is because it is. If I go up to Window, Extensions, Noun Project, well, here's the extensions I've downloaded, but I got to them through Find Extensions on Exchange. So if you go to Adobe Exchange, it's going to open up, make sure nothing crashes here, or it opens, it's opening over here. The Adobe Exchange site has just all kinds of powerful Pantone stuff. There's an iStock plugin. There's Open Asset if you're using that, Asana. So all of these you can actually load as panels into InDesign. Any questions so far?
Hey, Julie, I dropped the URL into the chat window for everybody if they want to click on it to get to the Noun Project.
Perfect, thank you. Like I said, you'll see it is on my workspace all the time.
Julie, I have a question from like a copyright standpoint. I know you can just Google like water droplet on Google Images. Is there any harm from like save as and then you go into Photoshop? Like, will you get in trouble like creating icons that way?
Potentially, yes. So you definitely don't want to just download something from some site and modify it and use it, because you potentially could get in trouble, because Google Images search is really, really powerful and they could find it potentially. So I strongly recommend something like the Noun Project that is, we're licensed to use it. There's a gajillion of them on there. Or even go to Adobe stock templates and get an icon set, you know, if you want something with more detail, and that way you just have them so that you don't ever have to worry about that. That's a really great question. I was actually at a client just a few weeks ago, and the president of the company came in. He was with a letter from a lawyer because he was getting sued for an image that was on their site. And it had not even been on their site for about a year, but somehow it was still sitting in their media library or something, and somebody found it and they were getting sued.
Wow. So, yeah, you've got to be careful.
Yes. So please use reputable stock photography sites.
Yeah, if you are on like a budget or, you know, that Department of One, and you can't get clearance for something to spend money on, if you use like canva.com or something like that already for maybe social media, I know that they have icons there. They might be, you know, the free ones are lower priority, right, or not exactly what you want, but will those get you in trouble, or is that fine because Canva's already taken on that responsibility?
Yeah, so the Canva ones, if they're offering them for free, then you can definitely use them. So if they're offering them for you to buy them, then you can use them. I mean, there are some licensing, and this gets into more copyright licensing things, but for the most part, 99% of the stuff that we do would have no issue. So If you decide to like put one of their graphics on a t-shirt and go to New York and sell 1 million of those t-shirts, then you might get in trouble.
Yeah, pretty much.
Pretty much. So there's some great free stock sites out there. You know, and I have at the end of this, I list some of those too. Awesome. All right, the next big issue, the big area that I wanted to talk about is hierarchy. And of course, most popularly, we see an org chart. So this is probably one of my favorite things to show and demo. So if you're spending more than about 2 minutes on an org chart, after you've set up the styles, of course, then you're spending way too much time on them. So this really can be almost completely automated, and I will show you how. So here's the org chart that we're going to use. Oh, sorry, that was me. Let me open up a file really quickly to show you where the data is coming from. All right, so whenever I do a strategy kickoff meeting for proposal, at the end of it, I always spit back to my client what they told us the team is going to look like. So I usually do that in a spreadsheet or even an email or a Word file, but something similar to this showing who we talked about for each of the roles and the staff and what firms they represent. So I'm simply just going to copy this out of this spreadsheet. I'm going to close that out. I'm going to go down. I have a blank page over here. And I'm just going to paste this text in here just for a second, because the first thing, isn't that fancy? I was still in Wingdings. Let me change that over. All right, so when I first paste it in, it is really having a heyday today. It actually gives me tab characters between each thing. So actually the first thing I want to do is do a Command F. And I want to find any tab character and replace it with an end of paragraph. So what I'm looking for is one big list. And then I'm going to do that. So now I have principal in charge, and I have each of these things as one big solid list. So that is what I want. So that's the first part. And I'm just going to put those aside for a second. Now the second part is the structure of the org chart. I'm not going to worry about the client right now. We're going to look at, we have these boxes. We have 4 rows of boxes and basically 3 columns. So let's draw that quickly here. To do that, I'm going to use the gridify feature of InDesign. If I go over to my text frame, my type tool, I'm going to click and drag, and I have not let go of my mouse yet. And now use the right arrow keys twice to create columns and the up arrow key 3 times to create those rows. So that quickly gives me what's called a grid in InDesign. All right, so if I turn on, I think I'm in the wrong mode here. Let me go to normal mode so you can see. These are actually threaded text frames from left to right, top to bottom. So if I look back up at my previous org chart, I know that I have 2 levels at the executive row, a single project manager in the second row, and then the other 6 are below that. So I simply can just get rid of this middle box. It's going to thread now from the top left to the top right. I'm going to get rid of the second row, the left side, and the right side. So now it's threading left to right on the top, and then it goes to the middle, and then it goes left to right for the rest of the frames. So with that, I can actually just copy my text from over here, paste it into my frame, and I'm good to go, but not quite. The last piece of the puzzle, or there's 2 more pieces. Let me just grab all of those. I'm going to create the object style that I've already selected for org chart box. And now I'm going to go into my org chart Make sure all of my text is highlighted. Right click on org chart role, apply role, then next style. So that immediately got everything in place, and now I can Option Command C on a Mac or Alt Control C on a PC to get those into place. Now we still have some spacing issues. These are a little bit too close together. If I just click and drag over all of them, I can click on one of the side handles. I'm going to click once. I'm going to take a breath, hold down the space key, and drag them out. And that actually changes the space between the columns. The same is true if I wanted more space or less between the rows. Click once, hold space key, and you can go up and down. So that's the basics of the structure of the org chart. These are all still connected. So we want to run a script at this point to de-thread these text frames. The next thing, of course, are the boxes, the lines that go between each. So maybe kind of these boxes and lines, and they're not really boxes, they're lines. I start with a box though. I actually just simply create just a rectangle. Let me assign it to my org line style. And because I'm kind of lazy, I just click off using my direct select tool, click that bottom line to delete it. So now I have that nice little arc structure that I want. I can hold down my Option or Alt key to duplicate it and bring it down, and then just draw the remaining lines. And of course, bring those other boxes in. So that is the Gridify feature, using it with text frames. We use it a lot with photos already, but this is how I have hacked creating org charts much more easily. Any questions on that?
Tomorrow, or later today or tomorrow, Daiquiri is going to send out a follow-up with a link to this recording. So if this just blew your mind and you were frantically taking notes, you can speed up to this portion of the recording and follow along with Julie. Maybe have it open on another screen so that you can kind of replay everything that she just blew our minds with.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you. I will move on to the next area. One other thing I did want to talk about, I'm going to delete those out. So Gridify works. We just did it with the text frames. We can also do it with any of the rectangle tools, either the frame or the rectangle tool. Same thing. I'm just, using my arrow keys. And there I just made a little grid of images. But then let's look at the line tool. So I'm actually going to draw a line, and I'm using my arrow keys and nothing's happening. I mean, I'm just like ridiculously. And I thought, well, great. It doesn't work with lines. Or does it? All I have to do is drag over my mouse, and that's the number of lines I drew, and make them as wide as I want or as little as I want. Hold down the Shift key. That will knock them into 45-degree angles. And then I can just move them around, resize them, and draw lines super quickly that way. So that is a really, really great way if you need, to draw some quick notebook paper or something and you don't want to have to draw a table. You can use Gridify with lines. So the next one that I always forget about because I use Gridify is step and repeat. So if I draw a shape and I want to duplicate the shape, and I'm really not liking the color of my current shape, so let's do that. Under Edit, Step and Repeat. I actually had it already set and it just ran it. But I can do however many rows and columns I want and how far apart I want them to be. So maybe I want 3 columns and 3 rows, and it gives me some additional options for spacing those. So that is another way to use the grid feature, or rather create a grid using step and repeat. Once you let go, these are all individual images. So that's fun. That is under edit, step, and repeat. All right. So the next area that's really critical in proposals that we try to turn this into graphics if we can is numbers and text. And by that, I mean a paragraph that includes numbers plus the content. And the reason it's so important is because numbers force us to pause. We have to figure out how those numbers relate to each other, but also figure out how they relate to the text. And it's actually very challenging for our brains to read a paragraph that's full of numbers. But then I'm sure we've all seen a similar paragraph in proposals listing out our management and engineers and so on, when this is simply an easy way to just create a simple pie chart. So I created a pie chart. So I can create a pie chart in InDesign using a font that I'll show you later. I usually actually go to Illustrator to do pie charts. And if we have time at the end, I can show you that. But mainly you want to draw a pie chart with really 5 pieces or less and call out whatever is your differentiating message in that pie chart, if you can. So ideally, in this case, maybe the fact that you have 25 professional engineers is kind of a big deal. So you'd want to just take it a step further than just the graphic and really add that additional element to give it some purpose. So here's an Illustrator, and I can show you how to do that using the column graph tool, actually. Beware of the multi-piece pie. And like I said, it really should be 5 pieces or less. So if you have that many data points, you should move into more of a bar chart. So we can do that in Illustrator, or how I did it, and that is using InDesign's math feature. So let me just show you that super quickly right now. I'm going to delete this text out for a second. So behind my pink bar, I have a full-size gray bar. There it is. So you can see that. And if I go up here to the width and height of it, it tells me it's a little over 8.5 inches wide and 0.334 inches tall. So what I know is that that is 100% of whatever these other ones are going to be. So if I know that my staff is 75% of something, I'm going to take that number and I'm going to copy it. So that 85386. I'm going to click on this pink bar now. And I'm going to say, okay, so we know that I want this pink bar to represent, oops, sorry, I hit the wrong key. This pink bar to represent 75% of that total. So that would be 8.5836 inches times, so holding down shift, the little asterisk over the 8.75. Now I want to make sure I'm anchored at the far left, my reference point, so it shrinks this way or grows this way, and just hit enter. And, and of course it's going to do that because I'm showing it. Oh, you know why? I have some text wraps. Cool, no idea why that's not working. They are not linked, so I hope you're impressed. Let's try this one. Okay. So this is currently broken. So let me just try a brand new one. All right, I'm just going to make it 8 inches wide. All right, so here is my block. They are rotated 90 degrees. They are rotated. No, they were. Thank you, James Van Dyke. I appreciate that. So yes, they were rotated. That was my problem. So now I have it, kind of the one I want to start from, this 8 inches. I'm going to hold down my Option or Alt key. I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to make it pink. And in this case, I'm going to do 8 times 0.75. And now you can see it's going to shrink to the right size. You do that again, anchor to the far side because I want it to be anchored to the left. 8 times 0.75. So when you listen to this again, fast forward that earlier part and just watch it from here. So hopefully that made sense. You can also divide. So maybe it's 8 divided by, maybe it's half of that. So 8 divided by 2 would be 4. But this is actually really powerful. Any number field in InDesign, you can actually use your 4 main math principles. So add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So I could do 4 plus 2, and that will get me 6, and so on. Any questions on that? All right.
I'm just curious, really, like, is this something new that you're playing with? Is this something you've been doing for a decade and I'm just behind?
I've been doing this for a while, yes, using math, because it's been there for a while. So a lot of people don't want to go through the effort of doing it here because you can go into Illustrator and actually draw a bar graph, but sometimes I'm like, you have so many more design capabilities if you do it this way, because I could do a gradient, you know, all kinds of stuff. But yes, this works if you're like, I really like this frame, but you know, my technical team told me it needs to be 2/3 this size, which I've heard that before. So then you can just go, okay, so 6 inches wide and it's supposed to be 2/3 of 6 inches, and that makes my head hurt, but that's times 0.66. So it works really well. And the same is true if I just draw, you know, just a square, and they tell me, I really, really like that square, but I want it to be, you know, 3/5 that size or something. Oh, that's way too hard. I'm not going to do that math. But say that they want it to be 1/3 that big. I would then connect my portions this time. So 3.27 times what did I say? 1/3. And that would keep the ratio the same for the height and the width. So very handy. We use it for project photos, maybe headshots when you're like, it's just a little bit too big. I think it needs to be 20% smaller, something like that. So these 2 areas right here. Also in your, you know, X and Y coordinates, anything that has a number, you can pretty much use math. Even the point, maybe I don't want it to be 1 point, I want it to be that times 6, because I can't figure out what 1 times 6 is, and it just made it 6 point. So very, very handy. All right, here is what I was talking about for creating graphics using InDesign in InDesign, and this is a font that is not free, so I'm so sorry. In fact, it's like $129, I think. But this guy has gone in and created a font that you can create all of these graphics, including pie charts, roses, all sorts of things. And it's really brilliant how he did it. So what I'm showing you here is kind of the title. This is the graphic, and then the numbers below are showing you how it is kind of on the back end, why the colors are coming out the way that they are. So it is a fascinating font called FF Chartwell. That will be on my resources page. I strongly recommend it if you build a lot in InDesign. One thing I will say is you tend to have to make your font a lot bigger for it to show up very well, but that's certainly easy. Create a paragraph style and you're good to go. So I have a paragraph style for this where I have nested styles, or I have nested character styles in my paragraph style to go in those color orders. So no matter what, this will always be in that color. So this one, if you look at it, it's Chartwell is the font, bars is the style. So instead of bold or italic or something, this one is bars. I could simply change it to bars vertical, and it's changing as I go. I don't think pie won't work because pie has to be at 100%, but you can choose really just from the styles, all the different things. It's really, really a very, very cool font. And it comes with a manual, so it tells you exactly how to use it. So again, sorry, I wish I got a kickback from them, but I'm a big fan. The only other thing that exists in InDesign that's a built-in panel is called Kadichi or Cassidi. And I find it to be very, very clunky. If somebody on this call has used that and has better luck, I would love to have a conversation, because it is a panel and it does allow you to import spreadsheet data, but it only lets you use, red, green, and blue, like the boring RGB colors. So I'm not a fan. Any questions on that? Awesome. All right, the next critical area that whenever we have this embedded in text, we want to make sure it's a graphic. That's when we're talking about geography. I see this a lot, in an intro paragraph that our firm has 5 offices. Don't spell it out, give them a map. So this case, I created a map. I actually got this map from, I think, a stock site where I have the whole US. The little map icons I made, and obviously put the points on there, but then you want to call out the point that makes the most sense for your firm. So assuming that you're pursuing work in San Antonio, you want to make sure you highlight that as a differentiator that your office is in San Antonio. But also be mindful if you're pursuing work in El Paso, you may want to not put a map and just go back to text, because you're kind of burying the fact that you really don't have an office out there. Another fun Adobe Exchange extension is ArcGIS Maps. This is available in Illustrator and Photoshop. It's not available in InDesign, but it's actually using ArcGIS to create some maps. And this is a panel from Illustrator. I have not played with it a ton. I've started to play with it, but it is a very, very powerful tool. So I do recommend that one as well. It's on the Adobe Exchange. All right. So the next one is process, and we get this a lot. We'll begin with a process of the following steps. And then they proceed to give us 3 pages of text with those steps in it. So one that I like to use is something simple like this. And I will be honest, in the old days, I painstakingly drew this shape and it took forever. And then I was trying to space them correctly. And let's look at a different option here. Again, I'm going to go back to my text frame tool. I'm going to click and drag using the Gridify feature, using my right arrow, and draw some shapes. Then I'm going to actually hold down Control or Command and using my left arrow to get rid of the space in between them so they are touching. So now I have 5 shapes. Let me just fill those with color quickly so that they look sort of like what we have above. Oops. All right, so the next thing I want to do, these are just simple rectangular frames. I'm going to go into my scripts panel. So if you haven't used scripts before, it's under Window, Utilities, Scripts. InDesign comes with a bunch of built-in scripts, and these are shortcuts, if you will. People have gone in and programmed multiple actions and given them to us in these tiny little programs that we can run. So in scripts, I go into Application, Samples, JavaScript. And most of the ones you see here come with InDesign. I do have some that I have loaded separately. But the one I'm looking for is the one called Add Points. And what I mean is that on a rectangle, we have 4 points at the 4 corners, but I want to have additional points at the halfway point of the line, so giving me 8 total points. So if I just double click on that, you can see these little guys popped up. I now have 8 points on each of these shapes. If I go to the direct select tool, remember direct select tool only affects the things that it has selected around. So I'm just going to select across the middle here. And even though all the boxes showed up, now I can use my shift and my right arrow key and draw the lines very simply. So again, that's running the script add points and then using the direct select tool to create the shapes. So a similar one is for a circle like this. I often have to do kind of these rounded arrows, and that's such a pain. So I'm going to move this off to the side. And I'm going to draw a circle. And give it a really big fat stroke, no fill. And let's go to pink, of course. All right, so on a circle, if I go to my direct select tool, I can see that I have 4 points, right, at each, well, not really edge. I'm going to actually run this twice. So that duplicated the points. I'm going to do it again, and it will just keep duplicating the points. So now I know that I want 1, 2, 3 line segments, and then I want to get rid of this segment right here. So I'm just going to click and drag over it with my direct select tool and delete, and it deletes that segment. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 segments. I want to get rid of this one. I'm going to click on it, click and drag, and delete that segment. I'll keep going to this one. And then the last one is here. So now I have my broken circle. So with my selection tool, I'm going to select all of them. I'm going to go to my stroke panel and add a triangle. So now I have my rotating arrows. And because they're strokes, they can be either aligned to the center, aligned to the outside, or aligned to the inside if you want to change how it looks. Any questions on that? Y'all are awfully quiet. All right. Well, the last area I have to cover is time. I've often seen a paragraph like this for their firm history, and they embed everything in it, all these years and numbers. So I recommend just a timeline. And again, I used Gridify to get the circles. That's my fake logo, but the rest of these are from Noun Project. And then of course the text describing this particular timeline. So whenever you can, think outside of the box, and you can draw almost anything that you want in InDesign directly. So here are some resources, and I'll make this available to Jackery. Some infographic building websites, if this was still overwhelming and you just want to use Canva, go for it. If you want to do it yourself, here are some other options for stock templates or the Noun Project, the link to get Chartwell, and then of course, the main tools that I use, InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, and just Adobe Exchange online to get those panels. So with that, we have about 10 minutes left, and I am happy to take questions. Any questions?
Y'all have like the best InDesign guru at your fingertips. Julie, you are an InDesign expert, correct?
I am.
What does that mean?
That means I took a really, really hard test to become a certified expert.
And they're few and far between, right?
Correct.
All right, so if this was like way overwhelming, mind-blowing, do you offer any sort of like tutorials, whether that's online, in person?
I am happy to talk to anybody interested. I certainly do. I can do online trainings, in-house trainings, anything to really help your team. I'm super passionate about really helping an entire team so that everybody's on the same page, everybody's using the same tips and tricks to really make proposals so much easier. Okay, Grand Junction asks, I know this could be a class on its own, but do you have any tips on paragraph, character, and object styles? I'm so glad you asked. So I'm just going to create a new little page here on the end. Yes, I have done an entire series of just styles. But the first thing I want to talk about and tackle is object styles. So a lot of people overlook object styles. I'm going to draw a frame that basically covers my margin here. So the nice thing now about object styles, and this just came out in the last couple versions, I can create a new object style. Let me go over here. And I'm just going to call this frame to margins. I don't, the fill and the stroke are fine, but this size and position options is what is so incredible. I can now say, I want it to be exactly this height and width, and it's going to sense that. And I want it to be at exactly this X and Y coordinate, so it's going to sense that as well. So click OK. Now this object style has been created. If I delete it and I just draw something else, just willy-nilly, I can just go to frame to margins. It's going to snap to my margins at exactly the same place on every page. Where do we use this? Resume headshots, project sheet photos. Anywhere that you're going to have the same object on every page. This has completely changed how I do templates and how I do even master pages. Because now I could do the same thing with a text frame. So maybe I want the main body of my text, to be over here. I can create that as an object style so that on every page, it will be consistent no matter what. So my resumes are set up that way, my project sheets, very, very powerful tool. The other quick thing on paragraph and character styles, just simply put, paragraph styles are super robust. I have so many in this file. And that is where you want to do most of your editing. Most of your styling should be in a paragraph style. Character styles should only be used to highlight something or make it bold where it's just a few words, not an entire paragraph. So always use a paragraph style, even if you have the header and it's only one word or two, maybe project approach, still make that a paragraph style. And then only use character styles for things that are really to enhance the text, because character styles will trump the paragraph style for the attributes that are assigned.